warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Welcome to our coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We begin with a call from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to world leaders to impose a no-fly zone over his country as Russian forces continue fighting the Ukrainian forces in Ukraine. This is contained in a video posted on social media. NATO countries have so far rejected the idea of establishing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, as it would mean engaging directly with any Russian plane spotted in those skies and shoot at them if necessary. Here's more on day 11 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
President Zelensky made the plea to world leaders, saying, quote, "We are people, and it is your humanitarian duty to protect us, protect people, and you can do it. If you do not do that, if you at least do not give us aircraft for us to be able to protect ourselves, there can only be one conclusion. You also want us to be slowly killed." End of quote. Earlier, he said the civilian airport in the city of Vinnymystia, 250 kilometers southwest of Kyiv, has been completely destroyed by Russian rockets. The fighting has taken place to the north and east of Kyiv and also in Ukraine's southern regions. President Zelensky also warned that Russian forces were preparing to bombard the southern city of Odessa. Almost 1 million people live in the historic port city on the Black Sea coast, which is close to the Moldovan border and the Russia-backed breakaway Moldovan region of Transnistria. In the meantime, civilian evacuations via humanitarian corridors in Mariupol and Volnovakha have been halted, causing a temporary setback to a truce between Russia and Ukraine. The British Ministry of Defense had said Russian forces would observe a truce in Ukraine starting at 10 o'clock Moscow time on Saturday to facilitate the evacuation of civilians via humanitarian corridors. As was agreed by the Ukrainian side, the humanitarian corridors would allow the exit of civilians from the two cities. Only a few people had been evacuated from Mariupol through the corridors. The nationalists prevented civilians from leaving, and 200,000 people from Mariupol and 15,000 from Volnovakha have still not been able to reach the humanitarian corridors. Mariupol's mayor, Vadim Boychenko, accused the Kremlin of lying to the Ukrainian authorities about the proposed evacuations. From his basement on a patchy phone line to anyone that would listen, with a Ukrainian flag behind him, Boychenko said the city had been under constant bombardment for 6 days. Meanwhile, there are fears by leaders that Moldova could be Putin's next hit. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken today reassured Moldova's leaders that the U.S. would rally international opposition to Russian aggression whenever and wherever it occurs.
Countries have a right to choose their own futures. Moldova has chosen the path of democracy, a more inclusive economy, a closer relationship with the countries and institutions of Europe. The United States supports Moldova in those efforts, grounded in our respect for the neutrality that's enshrined in Moldova's constitution.
No one knows when the war will end. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Russia will only halt its military operation if Ukraine stops fighting and Moscow's demands are met. Russia insists its invasion of Ukraine by land, air and sea is a special military operation, which the president claims without any evidence is needed to denazify the country. He has reiterated that the assault is going according to plan and on schedule.
Now, a total of 306 Nigerians evacuated by the federal government as a result of the hostilities in Ukraine have arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja this morning. They were brought home on board an Air Peace flight from Budapest, Hungary, where they had crossed over to safety from Ukraine. The refugees were received on behalf of the the federal government by the Director General of NEMA, Mustafa Habib Ahmed, who was represented by the Director Search and Rescue, Air Commodore Edward Kolawole Adedokun, along with representatives of all stakeholders involved in the reception at the airport. The National Emergency Management Agency and other agencies were attending to the returnees as of this morning. While welcoming the returnees on behalf of the federal government, the Director General of NEMA informed them that the President had approved the evacuation back home for the safety of those who were leaving, and also provided a sum of $100 to be given to each of them in aid of their transportation to their various locations. The returnees were also informed that arrangements had been made for a night accommodation for them to rest before continuing to their homes, but those whose relations had come to pick them were free to go home. It's the fourth batch of returnees in the ongoing evacuation approved by President Muhammadu Buhari. I have joining me now in the studio one of the returnees, David Kosheldo, who came in on Saturday. David, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Well, you're a sight for sore eyes, I must say. So you came in yesterday, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And how was your flight?
First of all, thank God for the flight. It was actually straightforward, but it was good, but just a bit miscommunication because we were told that we're going to land in Abuja. We did. Then from there, we're going to be taken to Lagos. We were taken to Lagos, but not at the earliest. We were taken extremely late. But other than that, it was a good flight, and I thank God for that.
And Lagos was your final destination?
Yes, ma'am.
So your folks may have been very anxious to have you back home.
Yes, they were.
Wondering why you're in the country and why you're not in Lagos already. Well, great to see you. First of all, how are you feeling about being back home, you know, fleeing the fighting in Ukraine, that you're safe, home and sound?
I won't lie to you, I feel very good. And I'm happy because at the moment, people, my friends and family, they are relieved. Because when I came back yesterday, my mom was literally crying. And I could see it in her eyes that she was really praying, and she was really emotional. And if that was the case, what of other people that their children were stuck there, and even the people in Sumy that their children aren't back yet? So I'm happy to be back, and thank God for that.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. Where were you, when the invasion started?
So I was in Lviv. It's a city towards the west side. It shares border with Poland. And yeah, that's where I was. But there were other people in different cities. I had some friends in Kyiv, some friends in Ternopil. So Ternopil, Uzhgorod, and Lviv were relatively safe. But we didn't know what was going to happen next. So everyone decided, okay, even though my city was the safest, we just had to leave on impulse because we didn't know what was going to happen next. Because if they started attacking civilians, we were part of the civilians then. So
you saw them attacking civilians?
Not attacking per se, but if they strike a building, for example, and the building tumbles over civilians, they just say, oh, they struck a building, but we're part of the way. So that's it. But they said they didn't attack, but I said if a building is struck and it falls on a civilian, lives are lost.
So did you ever get to hear any of the explosions go off close to you?
No, because as I said, Lviv was the safest, but I had friends from Kyiv that literally said they saw the explosions right beside their building, and they were like, no, they can't stay here, and they all started moving.
So you made a decision at the right moment, I would say, because Lviv, although hasn't come under any attacks, but the city still is relatively safe. So on what day during the invasion did you finally leave Ukraine, and where did you go? Okay,
so the explosions happened last week, Thursday, 2 weeks ago on Thursday. And so we decided, okay, we had the president, NSU president, Angela. He said, okay, because at that time, I think people were evacuating Thursday in the evening. So he said he's going to help us.
This was the day that the invasion happened. People already started leaving.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So Angela decided he wanted to go and check the border out to inform us. So he went on Thursday. He walked a couple of hours, 6 hours, because taxis, because it's not only us, but every Ukrainian were leaving, and taxis were needed then because taxis were in high demand. So on Friday, Angela communicated to us he was in Poland, and okay, us as a group, a Nigerian group, we said, okay, almost 40 of us in Lviv, the medical university, we said, let's all move together. And we started this journey 8 on Friday, and it was not a journey that I recommend to anyone. It was really stressful. So the taxis decided to drop us because I said the cars were a lot.
When you said they dropped you by the wayside, you didn't get to the border.
Yes, it's not because they were like, oh, just drop down, or it was because there were a lot of cars. And I said taxis were needed in
So there
Haiti.
was traffic congestion, which is why you didn't go any further.
Yes,
with the
and
taxi.
yes, ma'am. And so they dropped us couple of kilometers, like 20 kilometers. So it's like walking to the border. We walked for like an hour plus. You know, all of us were still in high spirit, so we're all chatting, we're all playing. So we got to the border, and it was a different story. They said that, okay, said we can't continue on foot. And at that point, they said we only need vehicles. So at that point, we're all like, we didn't know what to do. Fortunately for us, we had a vehicle that came, like a big coaster bus that came, but it said only women and children. So the girls that were with us, they entered the bus, they went towards the border. But us, the guys, were like, it just got to the point that, you know, started to split up and was like, okay, every man for themselves. So there was confusion then. And by that time, when the girls were reaching the border, they said that, no, they took them back. Maybe because they didn't have the appropriate documents. I don't know.
So the girls were taken across the border. Across which border, actually?
There was a border, Ravaruska border. So they went through.
To which country?
Poland, ma'am.
Okay.
So there was the Ukrainian side, there was the Polish side. So from the Ukrainian side, they were not allowed. I presume because there were a lot of people, so they brought them back to where we all were. And yeah, so we said I'd go back to Lviv because the other border was like 7 hours by walk and no taxi, as I said. So we said, let's go back to Lviv. That we're all tired, we're all frustrated. So we went back, but it wasn't like straightforward. We left, the girls came back around like 1 p.m. like from the border, and so we said, oh, let's go.
They brought back in a vehicle or they walked back?
No, the vehicle that took them brought them back.
Brought them back.
So we decided to come back to Lviv, to go back to Lviv. So by 1, we started, okay, let's go back because obviously we had our phones and we had internet, the mobile data, but taxis could not pinpoint our location then. So it's like we're just in hope that, okay, let's keep going, take a rest. We find, but for like 4 or 5 hours, we just kept walking, kept taking breaks. People were getting frustrated. Then we started splitting up. We started splitting up, like groups of 10. We're like almost for groups of 10, like another 8. Started splitting up. And fortunately for us, unfortunately, taxis could not come, and it was getting dark because it's still during winter time. So it gets dark very early. So we decided that the best bet is just to like flag some cars down and just like we're going to Lviv. That as long as we get to the point that the taxis can, yeah, no problem. So fortunately, I was with a group of 4 and they were with taxi there, and I'm like, I was waiting for them. They were all girls though, and I was waiting for them. I'm like, oh, I just stood them. I was waiting for the person that will make the taxi to follow. Let's continue our journey. Fortunately, from the taxi actually stopped in my front. I'm like, oh, to leave. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I said the amount. Then were
you paying more than the regular fee for the taxi, or was it?
No, I would say it was warranted, and yes, because of the situation
high,
ahead.
yeah. Okay. So what border do you eventually go close to?
So we took the Krakow border. That was on Tuesday. This past Tuesday, we took Krakow border, but we had to pay. We didn't walk. We went to the train station to book a bus.
And you didn't have any problems getting on the bus or on the train, because we've heard reports of Africans being discriminated against, at the borders, not being allowed to board trains or buses, and the president did give an order that men aged 16 to 60 had to join the army. Did you hear that before you left?
Yes, I did hear that, ma. I did.
Okay, and they still allowed you to go because, of course, you're foreigners.
Yes, ma.
Okay. So when did you get help? I mean, you crossed over to the Polish border. How did you get in touch with the Nigerian government, and what happened from there?
So I said we paid a bus ticket, almost $100 then, but at that point, money was not a problem because everyone was trying to flee. So on Tuesday, we decided to go. The bus came right on time. We entered, no problem. We dropped our boxes. We were just going. Then we got to the Ukrainian border. Someone came to pick our passport, 5 minutes. We went to the Polish border. Everything was smooth, straightforward. So we landed in Poland, in Krakow. It's a city in Poland. Then at that point, we're all tired. But lucky for us, one of the girls that were with me that followed, because we're a group of 5, so a girl like followed me, and she had a friend that was waiting for us in.
So you were fending for yourselves, not that you actually reached out to the Nigerian government at that point. At what point did the government know that you were in Poland?
I don't think they did.
They never knew?
It's like, yes, because, no one knew. So it's like we came to Poland.
Sorry, so how did you come back? You came back with an evacuation flight.
Yes.
How did you get on board that flight?
Yeah, so my mom was like, so I had friends in the hotel they were in or something like that. So, the flight is going by, that was on Thursday. That the flight is going by Wednesday. The flight was going. So we're like, we're going to come to this place. So we decided to come, and the girl just wrote our name down and we just left.
Yeah, so, and that's how you got on the flight, and then now you are back home.
Yes, ma'am.
What's going to happen to your studies?
Well, that's up in the air, ma'am. I've been talking with my parents, and lucky for us, Poland they've been like, we've seen some applications that if you want to like move schools to Poland, and my school they've been like, we need, because people, they know that even our school, they don't know when it's going to end.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're like, if you need some documents, this. But at the moment, my prayer is that everything goes back to normal, because majority of us that came back we grew there in Ukraine. We made mistakes in Ukraine. We got better in Ukraine. Because some of us had an adult life there. Like me, I'm still 19. So basically...
You will grow.
Yeah, I did grow in Ukraine. I met good people in Ukraine. And so my prayer is that everything goes back to normal. And we can just like forget all this and go back to normal.
Indeed. Unfortunately, things won't go back to normal. There's a lot of destruction in Ukraine. But our prayer is that, you find the best for your academic future, and that you finally become what it is that you had planned and set out to become. David, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
We're glad to have you home, safe and sound, just like your parents. Be good while you're here.
I will, ma.
Okay.
Thank you, ma.
The UN Refugee Agency says over 1 million people have fled Ukraine in just 10 days since the Russian invasion of the country. 1.5 million to be exact. The agency's High Commissioner Filippo Grandi calls it the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. A breakdown of this shows nearly 1 million have entered into Poland, more than 200,000 are in Moldova, and a little more than that are in Romania. The Czech Republic, Hungary and Slovakia have also seen refugees arrive.
More than 200 children evacuated from an orphanage in Ukraine's conflict zone arrived in the city of Lviv on Saturday after a 24-hour journey with their carers. Ranging from toddlers to teenagers, the children left their orphanage in Zaporizhzhia on the day Russian troops attacked a nearby nuclear power station. The very young clutched cuddly toys. None of them cried or complained. More than 65,000 refugees passed through the station on Friday alone, according to Mayor Andriy Sandovi. Even more approached the Polish border on Saturday. Hotels in the country have opened their doors to hundreds of orphans. President of the CKS Osak company, Tomas, says the children are from orphanages in Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv, and places where there are bombings, who are running away from the war right now. The children are those who went out because of signals telling them what they need to hide from the bombing. Many of the children ask, "What's going on? When will it end? When will it stop altogether? What will happen next?" Hundreds of refugees today crowded ferries crossing the Danube River as they fled from Ukraine into Romania. They arrived in Isasia, a Romanian town between Moldova and the Black Sea, as they continued their journeys through Eastern Europe.
Well, right now we're heading for Bulgaria. We have some friends there and some family, but our family was basically torn apart because I had to leave my parents and my husband at home. And I hope that when this is over, and I hope this is over soon. We'll still have a home to go back to.
It was like shoots, like it was a scary situation. That's why we decided to move.
Hundreds more formed a queue outside the Congress Center in Prague as they await further assistance for travel and accommodation. At the center, which usually hosts international conferences or musical shows, Ukrainians can also obtain necessary documents for health insurance as well as medical, psychological health support. Future plans for the Refugee Assistance Hub include setting up a job center. Refugees have also continued to flee over the border into the Republic of Moldova through the Palanca border crossing, situated only 60 kilometers west from Odessa. Members of the Turkish NGO arrived at the border on Saturday after traveling with supplies from Istanbul, adding to the Moldovan volunteers already present at the border, giving out food and hot drinks to the people as they cross. Women could be seen crossing over the border with their young children, numb with exhaustion.
And this is a tribute to journalists covering the war in Ukraine. They're running for cover from heavy shelling in the town of Irpin as Russian troops advanced towards the capital, Kyiv. Loud bangs were heard today as journalists ran to safety using the only escape route used by locals to leave the city. Irpin is just 26 kilometers northwest of Kyiv. We're grateful to our colleagues out there on the field who've been helping to tell the world in pictures, videos, and in their reporting the situation in Ukraine.
Go, go, go. Move. Shit. We hit bad again. Take cover.
To show you how difficult it is and the dedication of these colleagues to bring the stories to us. While the Nigerian government has succeeded in evacuating hundreds of Nigerians stranded in Ukraine, Nigerians in the northeastern city of Sumy are hoping to be evacuated as well. One of them is Linus Joshua Baka, a PhD student at Sumy National Agrarian University, Sumy. He joins us now. Linus, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. What has happened today in Sumy where you are?
Well, today has been relatively calm. Not like yesterday. We woke up to from 5 a.m. till about 9 a.m. We had 5 bomb blasts, and that's a terrible experience. But today is relatively calm.
So is it safe in the city?
Yes. As of today people went out to get food and other things. So today was calm.
So I'm wondering about that. You know, when people say that the stores are open, how exactly they get his supplies?
Well, at some point during the week or so, stores ran out of supplies, and that was a very horrible experience. A lot of people went to get water, food, and all of that. But I mean, they really tried in restocking. But I think any moment things would really get bad. But for now, I think they have stock.
So Linus, you say today is relatively safe, but you're still in Sumy. Why haven't you left?
Well, there was nowhere to leave. A lot of people tried leaving, though some succeeded, some didn't. But I mean, we tried everything to leave as groups, as individuals. You know, we're scared. Some people almost got attacked on their way. They had to return to Sumy. So a lot of uncertainties in staying or in leaving. But we really tried leaving, but it didn't really work for us.
I know you do have access, you know, to some sort of information coming either from the government or from news media. So what exactly are you seeing, and, you know, what's the message that's going out there to you?
We tried our best to be in contact with the Sumy authorities, with the school authorities too. So we've been trying to keep up with them, though they release hourly information telling us this is what is happening, or if it is time for us to go to the bunkers, or it is time for us to come up, it has really been a horrible experience, but trying to keep in contact with the authorities has really, really kept us kind of some assurance in our hearts.
Linus, you look pretty young, studying in Sumy, so I don't suppose you ever saw even the civil war here in Nigeria. For someone who's witnessing war firsthand in a foreign country, what does this mean to you?
Yes, I am pretty young. I've never experienced any war myself. But for me, I think I'm a bit older, but I'm considering the younger ones that are 17, 18, 19-year-olds. It's really, really a horrible experience to having to talk with them. Some even break down in crying and all. I've never experienced it in Nigeria or anywhere in the world. This is the first time, and trust me, it is scary. It is scary because you hear sirens are blowing and they're saying everybody should go to the bunkers. And then somewhere in the morning, you are hearing a blast. It's quite terrifying, very, very terrifying.
Yeah, and I know that you've also been, we've seen videos online of some of your colleagues, those who tried to leave and said that they were fired upon by the Russian forces, and then those who have also been told to stay back as well because it's too dangerous to go out. Have you heard anything from the Nigerian government regarding your situation or any plans for evacuation?
Yes, actually, a lot of people tried leaving. A lot of people really, really tried leaving, but just as you said, it didn't work. But as of yesterday, I spoke with the Nigerian student union president here, and he told me that, the Minister of Foreign Affairs reached out to him. So we've heard from them. And as of this evening, we heard the good news that there are evacuation plans that tomorrow, God's willing, 9 a.m. local time here, we should be moving out of Sumy.
Yeah, the Minister of Foreign Affairs did tweet very early this morning that he had had conversations with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister regarding Nigerians who are stranded in Sumy regarding your evacuation. So this is good news. Hearing from you that you know that the government is working towards getting you out of there. So are there plans now towards the evacuations? Have you put down your names? Are they processing, travel documents and so on? How exactly is this going to happen tomorrow?
Yes, a Google document was sent to everybody to fill it, and we've passed the word across to every Nigerian. You should fill the form, prepare your documents, and prepare essential things you would need on the road, because we're hearing that they experience leaving, Ukraine to the borders or to the nearby country is really, really, really hard. And it may be a long one, but of course we are willing to move because we really do not feel safe here at the moment. So I think everybody is prepared to leave.
Linus, when you say people are prepared to leave, how are they going to leave? I think that's the question I'm trying to ask here. Are you going by road? Is there a helicopter coming to pick you up or something? We just established the roads are dangerous. So how exactly are you leaving Sumy?
Okay, so from the information we got, arrangements are made for buses, and interesting enough, we heard that the train is going to walk too. So it's mainly buses and trains that we'll be using tomorrow.
Okay, so you're ready, you're all packed. And how many Nigerians are there with you in the institution that you're at who will be making it on this trip?
There are two universities here. There is the Medical University, and then there is the Sumy National Agrarian University. Over 500 Nigerians are here in Sumy.
Just wondering, how your education is supposed to continue after this, not just yours, but others who are attending the other institution that you mentioned. You said there are two universities there. So we're hearing that, some institutions are telling their students that if they have to come back, then they must get other documentation before they come back to Ukraine. Are you hearing that as well?
I've not heard that per se, but I know that what the authorities did was to close school till after this whole thing. But I spoke to one of my lecturers, and he was telling me that when everything gets calm, it will first be an online study before we will maybe return and then continue with the learning process.
So you're ready to come back home. Are you looking forward to returning to Nigeria and possibly making a detour on your education?
Well, I mean, it is not safe here. We just want to leave. We just want to get back home, feeling safe and happy once again. But of course, from there, we'll see what would happen. But the authorities have assured us that when all this is over, it will be safe for us to return to continue our learning process.
Linus, we'll be happy to have you back, you and the other Nigerian students who are there. The most important thing to us here is your safety. And we do hope, that you make that bus trip and the train ride to the border and you're able to get to somewhere where you can board an evacuation flight back home. Thank you again for speaking with us and do stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Now, U.S. payment firms Visa Incorporated and MasterCard Incorporated on Saturday said they were suspending operations in Russia over the invasion of Ukraine and that they would work with clients and partners to seize all transactions there. Within days, all transactions initiated with Visa cards issued in Russia will no longer work outside of the country, and any Visa cards issued outside of Russia will no longer work within the country, according to the company. A move by the payment firms could mean more disruptions for Russians who are bracing for an uncertain future of spiraling inflation, economic hardship, and even sharper squeeze on imported goods. Unprecedented Western sanctions imposed on Russia have frozen much of the country's central bank's $640 billion in assets, barred several banks from global payment systems, SWIFT, and sent the ruble into free fall, erasing a third of its value this week. Nigeria's mission in Russia is giving necessary support to Nigerians fleeing the fighting in Ukraine. And Western countries have imposed a ton of sanctions on Russia, the economic ones we just mentioned, concerned about how this might be impacting on Nigerians in Russia. I spoke to the Nigerian ambassador to Russia and Belarus earlier today. Here's what he said.
Well, certainly, Nigerian authorities are in touch with the Russian authorities with respect to how Nigerian citizens can be evacuated. And if the safe corridor can be allowed for Nigerian citizens to be evacuated through the Russian border, this is a possibility that we're exploring with the Russian authorities. Well, I think we need to be very careful about some of the pictures I am seeing, particularly on the social media. Some pictures that were taken 15 years ago happening elsewhere are being described as what is happening in a particular location. So I am a bit reticent at arriving at conclusion when I see pictures, even from reputable media organizations. Nevertheless, it's their job. I'm not saying that what they are saying is not correct, but I need to be very careful at interpreting whatever I see either on the media, formal media or social media. Certainly, we have even gotten in touch with some Nigerian students who are stuck at the Ukrainian State University in Sumy, but we can do nothing about it except if they are at the Russian border. They still remain within the territory of Ukraine, and it's the responsibility of the Ukrainian government to assist. Our embassy in Ukraine is exploring possibility of assistance for them to be evacuated through any of the safe corridors that have been created by the Ukrainian government.
Professor Abdullahi Shehu talking about the safety of Nigerians in Ukraine as well as in Russia and the impact of all the sanctions on Nigerians there. You can watch more of this on Diplomatic Channel. It airs Monday, tomorrow, March 7th at 8:30 p.m. on the UK platform on Sky 518 and at 11:30 p.m. on DSTV 420 if you're here in Nigeria. Getting the various sides in the Russian-Ukraine crisis to accept compromises is the only way to return to peace. A view of the president of the Association of Foreign Relations Professionals of Nigeria, Ambassador Gani Lawal. Ambassador Lawal told Channels Television's Ladi Akedulali on our current affairs program Newsnight that Russia is justified to feel threatened by the move of Ukraine to join either the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO for short, or the European Union, because in its view, that threatens its own view of regional security. He has a Russia's position will be taken by any other superpower in the same circumstances.
There's always a red line. The case of Ukraine is so volatile and very provocative that it's located in the doorstep of Russia. And as such, Russia is justified to think that, what's going on? We have to stop this. And that's why Putin said several times that on 5 occasions, those are the things he was pointing to, that part of the agreement that led to the dissolution of USSR was that none of these countries would join Western alliances, especially military alliances. But we see how the thing has been playing out. And then, because Russia has been playing underdog all along, but at a time when it gets to its jugular, naturally, is going to react. Well, some analysts have said that in the case of final conflagration, it's likely the Western powers will subdue Russia. But somebody like Putin will not accept anything like that. What is going to happen is that none of us living here, according to him, will live to tell the story. What it means is that he's going to go for the nuke button. And we are not ready for that. So we will continue to see how we can, pacify the two sides, especially Russia, to try not to go all out full war. At the same time, get the Western allies to accept some compromises. Let Ukraine be. Let it be a buffer country between the two, and let it continue to play its role for its citizens, rather than use it, to foment trouble for one superpower. That is going to be the compromise that we here, we probably will support. As far as I'm concerned, the role being played by the United States is quite unfortunate and unacceptable by goading Ukraine to go that far. And when it gets into the middle of the stream, the Baghdad started talking of sanctions. Sanction has always been there against Russia, and they have always been able to survive it one way or the other. So the big one sanction among sanctions, that is not the issue. You will see that none of them has been talking about trying to violate the territorial integrity of Russia. They keep on talking about freedom, democracy. Well, freedom, democracy, is it going to be at the expense of other people? No. You can have your freedom and democracy, but when you begin to go into military alliance, is that freedom and democracy? As far as I'm concerned, it's not. It's a kind of a Zionism, trying to, play the ostrich by saying you are evangelizing democracy, freedom. At the same time, you are trying to gaddle a rival superpower using lesser powers like Ukraine and the rest of them. So as far as this situation is concerned, we will continue to see how we can get Russia not to go, the way of resolving to use of atomic weapon. And at the same time, we continue to impress it upon the Western power that a compromise has to be reached so that we can have peace again.
You can watch the full interview with Ambassador Lawal on Newsnight tomorrow, Monday, March 7th at 9 p.m. right here on Channels Television. If you're just joining us, here's a recap of the key developments on day 11 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Our second attempt to evacuate civilians from the besieged southern city of Mariupol has failed with both sides blaming each other for breaking the ceasefire. Civilians have been killed after a mortar fire hit an evacuation route from the town, which has been under heavy bombardments. Russia and France have had yet another phone call with President Vladimir Putin, telling France's Emmanuel Macron that Russia would achieve its aims through negotiation or war, according to a French readout of their nearly 2-hour call. Now, earlier today, he told Turkish leader Recep Erdogan much the same thing. President Volodymyr Zelensky continues his calls to Western leaders to impose a no-fly zone over his country, but NATO rejects that. It comes as President Zelensky warns that Russian forces are preparing to bombard the southern port city of Odessa. Let's talk to foreign policy commentator Collins Wake, who has been patiently waiting by. Collins, thank you for joining me on the program. You have spoken about this before, the invasion of Russia on Ukraine, the sanctions that have been imposed. And then let's begin with what the Russian President Vladimir Putin said today, which is that Russia would achieve its aims through negotiation or war. I know the war is another means of diplomacy, but in this case, is it war with just Ukraine or war with the rest of the world?
Well, I mean, somehow President Putin appears to be in a completely different orbit from the rest of the world, because what we have here is no military action or whatever. This is a full-blown war. But it turns out to be a war that, he is probably not going to win, even if he wins the battle. Now, the battle is ongoing and very, very fiercely. He is flattening, as many places as possible. Odessa is next on the line. Mariupol, as we heard, is the battleground as of today, and he's making very, very strong advances and serious incursions there. So yeah. The air defense system of Ukraine is very, very weak, and they have more or less, Russians have more or less, taken control of the entire airspace of Ukraine. So a very serious advantage. And of course, NATO, United States, and the allied countries are not quite prepared to march Russia up militarily. So it means that he's having a free reign. So the battle is there for him to win, but he's losing the war ultimately because the rest of the world appear not to have been as united as they are today against a common, country, against one single country, which is Russia. Even those perceived to be Russia's ally appear
maybe because this is a superpower we're talking about.
Well, yes, he has, absolutely. He has quite a lot to offer. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And even he has quite, something critical to offer the Europeans, which is the oil, natural gas, and then oil. So those are very, very important commodities. And so at this time, they are pretty careful. But the moment they are able to lock him out of that critical commodity, which is oil, probably the pendulum will swing differently. And that is why there are good reasons to believe that winning the battle as he's doing now is an entirely different thing from winning the war. And so it remains to be seen how that plays out.
Yeah, and Collins, President Zelensky, he's been releasing these videos on social media, which is how he's communicating with Ukrainians and with the rest of the world. Today, it's once again about the help that NATO and EU countries are willing to offer. And he says, look, a no-fly zone would really help. When you see, the kind of bombardments that the Russian forces are meting out on Ukraine, you really wonder the sort of help really Ukraine is getting, and why and at some point, if NATO and the EU might have to put boots on the ground to stop Russia.
Well, I think they are. NATO European Union and then United States on the other side of the Atlantic, I think they are bidding their time very carefully. But I think also that there is a resolve within this tripartite arrangement not to use, not to deploy their military directly and be directly involved in this war. Now, what they are providing so far, and I believe that the Secretary of State for the United States, Anthony Blinken, had been asked this question about what support militarily that they are giving to Ukraine. And he was clear in saying that whatever help they have to offer, air defense systems and the rest of them, are going to Poland. And the essence is to actually fill up whatever ammunition, whatever military support that Poland is giving to Ukraine. So that clearly shows they are not going there. And the reason is perhaps not to escalate, not to turn this into third world war. They are open. They have some intelligence that mortals like myself don't have. So it's difficult to assess whether that decision is the right one or it isn't. But in the end, Marachi, historians 50 years from now, when they look at all that is happening now, I am probably certain that they are not going to remember about which stock market fell as a consequence of this war. What is going to be on the pages of history is actually, the bombardment and the actions that different countries took to protect, the weaker, partner in this whole crisis, which is Ukraine. And apart from the soft help, the heavy help needed remains absent, and we can only, wait and see how it all plays out.
Speaking of how it all plays out, over 300 people, I think 365, have already died or been killed in the war in Ukraine. The UN Refugee Agency says over 1.5 million people have fled Ukraine. They might reach as much as 4 million by the time this war is over, whenever it is over. But yet you hear the Russian president saying that Russia would achieve its aims through negotiation or war. And then you also hear him on Saturday saying that until Russia's demands are met. As some have speculated that the demands, of course, have to do with NATO, which is NATO's expansion policies, which are a violation to the agreement with Russia. Where does NATO and the other countries, where and how do they meet Russia midway?
Up front, I would like to correct one impression that appears to be successfully making the round, and that is the fact that there was an accord signed between Russia and the rest of the world that, NATO expansion was something that, isn't going to happen. There is a difference between an accord and a conversation that included you can call it, gentleman agreement that NATO will not expand. So if people are making reference to the Minsk Accord, well, there is actually, I may be wrong, but I do not think that there was any single airtight commitment to Russia about NATO expansion eastward. I think it's important to get that very, very clear. Now, we also need to understand that Russia and the rest of them is a member of the United Nations Permanent United Nations
Security Council.
Security Council is a permanent member. Now, what that means is that they underwrite 101% the whole notion of sovereignty. So, if the citizens of Ukraine are disposed to joining NATO. And by the way, NATO has never said, even before and up to the moment of this crisis, NATO has not actually said that they are admitting Ukraine into the fold. So
right, Mr.
it is
Collins.
out of the fear of what is happening, in terms of military installations in Ukraine and other countries that is bringing that is the source of the excuse that Putin is given. And then the membership of EU, which is another cardinal point of his demand. I mean, if the people of Ukraine decides through their president that they want to join the EU because they are more aligned to them than to Russia. That's how it has to be. It has to be respected. Yes,
thank you. Thank you so much. I know we always have a lot to talk about when we get together, especially on these issues. Thank you so much for your analysis. We'll have to bring you back to conclude your thoughts on this. And as we end, thank you so much. And as we end the program, it's been bittersweet reunions at the Polish border, families reuniting with loved ones after being previously separated by the conflict. Reunions have also been taking place in other borders. Families and friends seen embracing, reuniting with their loved ones at the Medica border crossing point. Well, they didn't get to see them long enough. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.